Good morning and welcome to the Communities of Opportunity Governance Group informational session. We are lucky to be joined by former governance group member Tony Toe today, and we look forward to discussion and questions about the COO Governance Group and Advisory Board. So quickly, our information session, we will do a quick round of introductions, go into a little bit of the governance group background, application information, and context. And really the majority of today will be left for discussion and Q&A with Tony. So the Communities of Opportunity Governance Group are these folks currently on the screen. We are lucky to be governed by a majority of seats for community members. And COO itself is a unique community public-private partnership funded jointly by King County through Best Starts for Kids, Levy, and the Seattle Foundation. And COO is really focused on supporting transformational change in communities through three main strategies: place-based and cultural community partnerships, systems and policy change, and the learning community. I will also add in the chat a link to the current governance group page where you can see previous meeting notes, as well as the governance group guiding principles document. So what does the governance group do? What are their responsibilities? The governance group is really there to provide strategic leadership, direction, and oversight for the entirety of the COO initiative. The governance group is responsible for promoting COO's mission, vision, and values. And it also serves as the COO Best Starts for Kids Advisory Board. So with respect to oversight and decision-making of the COO portion of Best Starts for Kids levy proceeds. Governance group members are responsible for championing COO's anti-racist and pro-equity values, elevating community voice in all aspects of COO, outreach, network, and building relationships with community leaders and groups as ambassadors for COO, including gathering community input on relevant issues and promoting COO activities and opportunities with community as well as community leaders. We ask that governance group members actively participate in the discussion and deliberations of the governance group and prepare for those discussions, as well as complete the requisite King County board member training sessions and are aware of and transparent with any potential conflicts of interest, especially when it comes to funding decisions. So with the passage of the Best Starts for Kids levy this year and the implementation plan guiding Best Starts for Kids investments, including investments in communities of opportunity in 2022 through 2027, we have also updated the composition of our governance group. So our governance group is increasing in the future to be a minimum of 20 members, a maximum of 24 members. Again, a majority of seats were reserved for community representation, and that includes members who are from entities, partnerships, organizations that have been awarded COO funding through those three strategy areas I named before: place-based and cultural communities, systems and policy change, and the learning community. And some of our partners are funded through more than one. We can talk through if that's the case for applicants, what might the best or most applicable sort of seat be in that case. And also we've increased our community at large membership. So we're looking for at least 20% of governance group members who are from the community at large and are not representing entities that have been awarded CEO funding, but instead are from communities in King County that would qualify for funding, and who may be grassroots organizers or activists in such communities, and who have lived and worked in those communities and are just intimately connected and grounded to those areas. Communities of Opportunity looks to fund communities in the highest sort of 20% of our CEO index, which can be found on our website. And we can also answer any questions about those communities in that 20% of the CEO index, and what that looks like in terms of defining, if it's a place-based or cultural community, what that looks like. We are also looking for at least one member who represents the urban, native, indigenous, or tribal communities. We are looking to recruit members with system sector knowledge within CO's results areas. So housing, health, economic opportunity, and community connection, or sort of civic engagement are those 4 results areas. And in addition, there are seats reserved for the designee of the King County Executive, designee of the King County Council. There are 2 members appointed by the Seattle Foundation, and the CEO Director also serves as a non-voting member of the board. So quickly, we'll go through the timeline and sort of major milestones of the governance group appointment process, application and appointment process. So we have a nominations committee that is made up of current and former governance group members, advised by staff, and they're really helping to guide and advise the application process. They're supporting outreach, and they will also help review applications to make recommendations to the executive on appointment and nomination and appointment. We will be holding a series of informational sessions like this remotely via Zoom between now and January. So there will be several opportunities to ask questions prior to the application due date of February 4th. We plan to make recommendations to the executive for these appointments within February of next year. So pretty closely soon after the application is due and upon review of applications and potential interviews. And then we will be inviting those folks to attend the March Governance Group Board meeting. We expect that executive recommendations to the council for their confirmation will occur between March and April of next year.
With that, I will turn us over for the remainder of the time for questions and answers. And here's some questions that have already come in that we can start out with. So Tony, I will pass it to you to kind of share your reflections on your time as a governance group member, your hopes for the future of CEO, and what kinds of qualities, skills that you think would be helpful for folks who are serving on the next iteration of the governance group.
Thanks, Whitney. I'll try to be brief. I'll talk on forever about this, but you should read, just read the COO stuff but put it in the context of 10 years ago. Okay, it sounds really almost boring now, all these principles, you hear about it all the time, but 10 years ago, this is precedent setting. So I think the first thing important is to know that COO was something that philanthropy and government did not want to fund. I mean, I don't want to say that they didn't know, they just did not want to fund. There was a lot of resistance. I was part of a funders group that involved Gates Foundation, Paul Allen Foundation, Russell Family Foundation, Boeing, all those guys, and they all stepped away. And it was really Michael Brown and advocacy. He's one of the co-chairs of the board. That Seattle Foundation became the sole private philanthropy, so to speak. And we had no public money at the time. So this is really important for new people to know that COO is probably the first of its kind in the country. The other thing is that the composition of the board is also unprecedented, where you have a lot of community people and also grant recipients, because we wanted to include the voices of those that were most impacted, but not exclude them from getting the resources that COO would provide for them. So that's another thing to remember, and that's where the conflict of interest stuff comes into play, and we have to be very careful about that. The third thing is that we provide ongoing multi-year support, and I don't know if this is going to change, but sometimes you get a big chunk of money, and I worked for a nonprofit called Homesite for almost 30 years before I retired, and so I'm very familiar. We were well funded, both philanthropically as well as public sector, and funders fund you for the reasons that they want to fund you, not necessarily for the reasons that you wanted the money. So to get relatively unrestricted funds and to get it on an ongoing basis is really critical, because a lot of groups, you just get one chunk of money one time, it could kill you because you can't plan for a windfall. Or you get, you apply for the money because you have to do all these things and it takes you away from your mission. So funders can actually debilitate organizations. COO is very aware of supporting the intention of the grantee, the mission of the grantee. And so I think, relatively good, smaller chunks of money, but on an annual basis allows organizations to plan. And that really is what capacity building is about. So I'm really more for the $50,000, $75,000 a year, but ongoing support than to get, $200,000 and goodbye kind of money. So that's something about COO that's very different. And the last thing that's different about COO, being based in Seattle, we always hear, oh, we can't fund outside of Seattle. This is a King County fund. And for a lot of the smaller jurisdictions and nonprofits that are particularly in South King County, where many of the needs have moved because of gentrification and displacement in Seattle, a lot of the residents and people are now in South King County. So being able to fund in King County wide is really, really important for COO. That's very different about a lot of funders, don't do that. They either fund outside of Seattle or they fund in Seattle only, and they don't fund in King County. So those are some of the sort of, musings or whatever from the past.
Thanks, Tony. I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on your time as a governance group member, and maybe how participating on the governance group, just how that experience has been, and maybe what you would recommend or what advice you would give to future governance group members.
Yeah, I think it's, you can't really have equity. I mean, you can talk equity, but you can't have equity unless there's co-creation and co-implementation of the plans, the policies, and the programs, okay? And I think that's what the governance group is about, is a co-creating process with the funders with the Seattle Foundation and with King County. And again, this is something very unique, that the grantees or the people that are actually impacted by the funding and the programming is actually at the formative table, at the governance table, where you can decide how the program is created, where the money goes. It's kind of an advisory group. We don't have the legislative authority to do it, but typically what we say goes, and that's a role that governance committee members need to know. That's whether you want to call it a privilege or a burden. You are responsible for public resources, and what you do ensures the legacy and the continued support, not just of the government, but also the people, because without the ballot measure, we don't get the money. So just remember that, you're not just there for your organization, your program to make sure there's money there. You're there for everybody. And that's really, really important, being a governance to have that hat. The other thing is that the COO is not single issue, single use. It's a what we call cross sector. And that's very important because you can't solve problems. You cannot do system and policy change with single issue funding. You have to look at the whole, everything that affects people. And that means you have to think beyond your niche. When you're on the governance committee, you just can't think about what your program is or what your sector that you're in, but you have to think about the whole. How do we improve the lives of people that have historically been marginalized and really, really reflect their voices? And to that, you got to look at their whole life and all the things that affect them. I mean, and not everything. We don't cover education as much as health, economic development, and housing. But in any case, just think holistically.
Thank you. And you saying that reminded me something I didn't mention about the past and current governance group, which is even more true with the expanded composition moving forward, is that a majority of governance group seats are reserved for a community. So what Tony's saying about really being at the formative table for communities of opportunity decisions, especially around funding decisions, as well as the strategic direction of the initiative. Really, it's community setting those that conversation and making those decisions. Not the two funder groups who have a seat at the table, but are not in the majority. And with that, I think I'll open it up to just questions, discussion from Laura and Cynthia. And Andrea being here, I'm sure she would be happy to answer questions as well as the director.
I guess my experience being on boards, I was briefly on the board for Sierra Club and in Seattle, and then briefly for Washington State. And I found a lot of and then be Seattle now, and I find a lot of the time board members are spending a lot of time on, regulatory stuff and budget and things like that. And I think that's essential. I have a board now and I love all the work they do around that. But it sounds like this board is more of more working and more collaborative and more hands-on in terms of shaping things. I don't know if you can talk more about like the percentage of time that's spent on kind of like the boring stuff versus the cool stuff.
I don't think we spend any time, very little time on the boring stuff, as you say, because that's more the staff does that from our perspective. We're very much focused on impact. How do we create the most impact in communities, and also to the integrity of the COO's mission, that we don't lose it to the electeds. We don't lose it to the rich people that control philanthropy, that we really be true to ourselves and the people that we want to support. That's really what we focus on. I think we're lucky because I have to give a lot of credit to County Executive Dow Constantine. I've been involved with equity stuff in Seattle, Pierce County, Tacoma, everywhere. And the most consistent, and I think as genuine as you can be from a position of elected office, where you have to listen to your constituents. People criticize Donald Trump, but you know what? He was duly elected in a democratic election. He didn't steal the election. So the American people put him in office, okay? So we cannot just blame elected officials. We have to look at ourselves because we put them there. So there come some constraints at that level, but given all of that, the county has been really consistent with their race and social justice initiative and their plan. And that leaves a huge opening. And I think one of the things that COO should do is to partner more to create policies. In addition to the funding, think about policies that can help change people's lives in other areas. And so that we can, we can give funding to support, but also I think there's an opportunity because the King County Council and the King County Executive are all committed. We have the Metro, I've been working on the Metro Mobility Equity Cabinet, a co-chair for the last few years, and we're passing precedent-setting legislation tomorrow in King County Council that's going to change the whole way transit service is going to be allocated, that we're going to focus on where the needs are greatest in marginalized communities, and there's going to be using equity data to drive where the resources are going to be allocated. And that's, working in partnership with the county executive, because we can't pass any laws. So that's the one area that maybe COO should consider how to influence or support, even without having to initiate other things that people are doing in the education area, the areas that we don't touch, transportation and transit, so that it actually reinforces the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Tony. And I think I'll add on there because I didn't talk about this in the intro portion very much, but our three strategy areas: learning community, place-based and cultural community partners, and systems and policy change funding. They all ideally are working together in concert really for that systems and policy change that impacts all communities. We are a strategy area of Best Starts for Kids that does not focus on direct service, but we're really trying to fund transformational change that comes from systems and policy change through these strategic mechanisms. And we're looking to deepen that work, I think, in the next phase of implementation. And Andrea is here, so she can correct me where I go astray as well. Any other questions?
Full disclosure, I've been working with Best Starts for Kids on the RFP for the Stopping the School to Prison pipeline, and the TRIP program and others. I'm a grants management kind of person, regardless of whether it's affordable housing, whatever. That's kind of like my thing. And so I've been providing a lot of technical assistance to grassroots BIPOC efforts to help them develop the capacity to leverage these funds and get them a fiduciary agent until we get them to be a nonprofit, and teach them all of the tools to be able to culturally maintain the integrity of the services they provide while still meeting the outcomes that are required in mainstream funding sources. And so that there's, not a breakdown. I'm not trying to get them to be a part of the nonprofit industrial complex, right? Which is inherently racist in and of itself. That's my personal opinion. So anyway, doing that. And so I have been involved in a lot of the COO learning opportunities, et cetera, helping BIPOC organizations leverage those funds, providing them technical assistance to be able to do the outcomes piece, and help them when the systems that they're involved in change politically. Like recently we had the elections and now city councils have changed. And so how their grants were effective before may change now because they're dealing with a new legislature and how did or a new government, and how do they address that, right? Providing that technical assistance. And I'm located in Federal Way, so I'm really focused on South King County. And so I'm saying all that to say that I've had different experiences. And so I was interested. I've been on boards forever. Like I'm on the Boys and Girls Club of King County right now. I'm on several different boards, so I wear different hats. But the reason why I was interested in this is because I noticed three things that happened. And like I said, I've been involved, so in different capacities. One is that BIPOC organizations' expertise are different. And this is an excellent funding source, but sometimes they don't have the technical assistance to really be able to meet the needs. And so the question is, how do we empower Seattle Foundation staff to identify what those needs are so they can best utilize that? And this is no offense to anybody, because everybody has a different learning style, but not all of the contract monitors at the foundation are good at pinpointing that or see it readily and then help them. And so some of those organizations aren't able to come back and fund because they didn't meet their obligation. It was because they just didn't know how. So how do we do that? So there should be a connect policy-wise on how we as the group, the advisory group, could help those foundation staff be able to provide that. And how do we do that? That should be built in, right? Number two is that what do you do when an organization has organizational change and dynamics? So there's one organization who I got on the board on to help save them, but by then they had screwed up their COO grant so bad they can't come back. But they do really good work. And they were the only one doing systems change here in a particular community. So now that we're back and we're better, the question is, what do you do to get back in the game? And sometimes that happens. Everybody falls down and falls short, right? So how do you deal with those reputations and those issues when this is an excellent fund source? And that is something that it should be doing, is allowing you to falter, but come back stronger, learn from it, and still leverage those funds, especially if you're doing the work in the community, right? So you get rid of the one or two bad apples that weren't necessarily allowing you to be as proficient as you can. You build back your reputation, you get back into the game, and you do the work. So the question is, how do we foster governance so that you can do that, right? Especially when you have the skill set. You just got to get rid of the one or two folks or the issues, the barriers that were preventing you from being to excel. That was the second one. I think the third one is that I'm really all about, and I so agree with you, Tony, and I appreciate what you said about bringing in those different funders and coming in with a cohesiveness, a plan. So Virginia Mason Franciscan Health, we give hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars away, but we should be partnering with you all, looking at the healthcare piece and what systems are being changed. And we also know that the social determinants of health, housing, food, job opportunities, right? Access to behavioral health supports that are culturally appropriate, right? Transportation, education, that these social determinants of health impact your quality of health, right? And so we need to be looking at those organizations that are out there providing services in those different areas and supporting them with an anti-racist platform. We need to bring our resources in and say, yes, let's fund these together. So where a COO may be giving 50,000, 60,000, maybe we can give 150,000 for a pilot program for something, and then help them take that money and leverage it to get even bigger dollars to do an even greater impact. Right? So how do we do that? And since I have the name behind me of the organization, Virginia Mason Franciscan Health, it would be great to get those others back at the table, right? Who originally said no. And Tony, I know who some of them are, right? And say, now see the great work that we've done? Can you imagine what we can do if we pulled our resources together and did this even more? Right? And how do we do that? And so those are kinds of the three things that I was looking at and wondering if there's an opportunity for that. I mean, I've had conversations with Council Member Lydia Safo Dawson, who happens to be my city council member, and I'm on the Human Services Commission for the city of Federal Way. So she and I talk about human services dollars all the time. And about bringing that in, because that's one of the things that Best Starts for Kids had been missing in the beginning, were some of these things, like leveraging that, like, let's make it happen, right? So.
You know, Cynthia, that's music to my ears. And, you know, the one thing is that COO got level funding in the Best Starts. We didn't get the proportionate increase. And that was really disappointing to me. That in fact, I think that was kind of a failure on our part, which is why I think it's really important for COO to get into advocacy and partnering with legislative leaders so that, you know, it doesn't happen again. And I'm thinking the point that you make, because policy and systems change, and changing wealth disparity is generational. It's not, you're not going to do it in 2 or 3 years. So unless we can strengthen the boards of the grassroots organizations that we are serving and professional development of their staff, our impact will be minimum, because it's going to take them 15, 20 years to do what we want them to do. And so what we want to do is we want emerging organizations that are not the established groups that have been doing the same stuff that hasn't worked for all this time to really come to the fore and do system and policy change. So to do that, we have to support those organizations. And fundamentally, there's a lot of these groups, they don't have boards. They're very individual based. So it's hit or miss. If you hire the right person, great. But somebody else takes over and they have no accountability. So I really think that one thing the COO was not able to have the resources, and this is where bringing in additional resources may be able to be helped, is to strengthen the governance structure and to have professional development for the staff and do peer. We used to do that when COO was just the place-based groups, Andrea. We used to have these meetings, right? And there's a national group that does that. We're a part of it, NeighborWorks America. And, you know, they actually spend a lot of time underwriting the organizations. You know, every 3 years they come, they do a site visit, they look at your board, they interview your board members, they talk to your staff, you know, just to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. So what you're saying is so important, Cynthia. There isn't the resources, and people don't appreciate that because you can't use that. Capacity building isn't a good poster child image thing that people want to give money to. But I think if there's a way that we can get more resources to support the organizations that are already succeeding, that we're funding, but helping them to last on a generational basis is so critical.
I think the other questions that you brought in, thank you, Cynthia, too, are great, important questions. And as I think Tony noted, you know, the landscape has changed dramatically, not just in 10 years, right? But we know, right? We can see the markers of how it's changed. And so these conversations are even more important. I think that from where we sit, I sit in government, you know, as part of COO, and there's a commitment both of the staff at the founding and funding partner, Seattle Foundation and King County, to really use this. You know, we're learning. The beauty of COO is we have folks that are so close to us, like Tony and members of our governance group and our funded partners, who continually push and ask the kinds of questions that you're asking. You know, how can philanthropy change? How can our staffs change? How can government change? And how can our staff and systems change? So I think your questions are absolutely right on and deserving of kind of this next phase for how we're doing this. And both within Best Starts as well as within COO, we talk about we're going to have some spectacular kind of wipeouts and, fails along the way that hopefully get us to, learning from it, as opposed to just kind of hunkering down and creating more restrictions on things. So appreciate, your curiosity and your questions and your experience that, you're bringing into our learning in our space too, collective space around this solving of these problems, challenges.
Laura, I thought I saw you go off mute briefly. Did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to say, this conversation is confirming that, this is something that aligns with what I believe in and what I've seen over the last 5 years. And my reticence to be a nonprofit came from a lot of the fears of not wanting to participate in the nonprofit industrial complex. So, being around people that aren't afraid to say that out loud is a good space for me to be in. And yeah, this is a good conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll add to, 2022 will be in some ways a transitional year for us. So we'll be in our sort of preparation phase for launching the next round of RFPs for major strategy areas. And we're really, as Cynthia, Tony, and Andrea were saying, looking back to the learnings that have occurred and some of our internal spectacular wipeouts, so to say, the things that we maybe set up not so great, and how to improve on that for the next round of funding, for our community partners, for the entirety of the process, for the kind of technical assistance and capacity building that comes alongside the continuum of funding, and where we can invite other partners in to share in this work, because if we're really seeking transformational change, we know we can't do it alone. So, really embarking on this internal learning process, inviting community into that where appropriate, and also pulling from all of the feedback that we've also already gotten from our community partners, from our governance group, et cetera. So I think that that continuous learning process and trying to improve our internal systems, how we act as a funder, is also a core value of CEO, and I think something that is really important for the future governance group to be a part of. So I realize we're actually 1 minute over now our 45-minute info session. I will, Tony, any last words?
No, I'm glad to have the opportunity to meet you. We need the next generation to step up. I can say that because I'm an old man. So yeah, I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Laura, for being here. We have our second info session with Michael Brown will be this Thursday at 1 p.m. If you'd like to talk to Michael about his experience on GG, or invite others to come to that session. It's the same registration form that you all used. I dropped some other information in the chat as well. And you can always email me or Andrea if you have any questions throughout the process. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Whitney.
you. Thank you so much, you all. I appreciate this.
It's nice to Zoom meet you all too.
Thank you.
Thank you.